Hi, I'm Buckley and you're listening to the House Culture Podcast.
House Culture.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the House Culture Podcast, hosted by me, the managing editor at House Culture, Matt Rouse. As ever, I hope you're managing to stay safe in your bubbles out there. I hope we can cure some of that frustration you might be having by delivering some good vibes from the club directly into your lockdown life at home. If you're a returning listener, thanks once again for tuning in, and I hope you have enjoyed the stories that have been told on the podcast during this second season from such personalities as Fatboy Slim, Danny Rampling, Dawn Hindle, Smoking Joe, Mark Archer and Shades of Rhythm. Also, if you haven't already, get stuck into the folk featured in our first season, where we chatted to legends such as Greg Wilson, Terry Farley and Danny Clockwork. And if this is your first time and you're not familiar with house culture and what we stand for, we are a collective of house music fans who have come together through our mutual love of the beat to celebrate the spirit of house music. Instagram is our home at houseculture.net. That's where you can get up close and personal with us and like-minded individuals from across the world. Let's get on with this next episode, yes? In this one, we chat to a DJ who, after being inspired by a visit to the Hacienda, went on to become a regular DJ there before landing residencies at places such as Back to Basics, Renaissance and We Love at the infamous Ibiza club Space. His name's Buckley, and as you'll hear, the man is full of stories, like recalling the first time he visited the Hacienda.
We got pointed down this little cobbled street that was over the road from the Hacienda. First thing I saw was this guy chucking an air horn down his pants. What's going on here? And then we went round the corner and there must have been about 1,000 people queuing outside his club. I was like, what is going on here? I've never seen a queue like this for a club before it's open.
His most important DJ residencies.
I really came into my own musically and as a DJ when I started playing at Basics. I remember Dave Beer saying to me, he was like, you've got a fan club. He goes, we've never had a resident yet in the history of the club where people are coming to see the resident and more importantly you. And he was like, your sound's the sound of the club.
What happened when he put his record collection of 8,000 12 inches up for sale?
So I just seen that Seth Troxler's bought Dave Osler's record, seriously thinking about selling mine, serious offers only, and it just went bonkers. I was in the NME, you've never mentioned me once in all the years of playing them, and now I'm selling them, you want to write about me? I'm like, that's irony for you.
And the effect this whole scene has had on his life.
Endless good times. The whole summer of love, the reverberations of that will go with me to my grave and wherever I go from then on.
So strap in for an epic trip that takes in not only Manchester, Leeds and Ibiza, but also India, Peru and Costa Rica. This is Buckley.
House Culture.
Hi Buckley.
Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks.
Excellent. Welcome to the House Culture Podcast. Thanks for sitting down with us.
My pleasure to be here.
Inviting us to your flat in East London here. We've got decks right in front of me, a whole section of vinyl, which is good to see. You've been on the house music scene for many years, holding residencies at some of the biggest nights across the UK and in Ibiza and around the world as well. Thinking Renaissance, Hacienda, Back to Basics, We Love Sundays at Space. We'll come on to all of those in our chat.
Sounds good when you put it like that. Is that what happened?
God, you tell me. So we want to start at the beginning. Can you just tell us about your experiences with music growing up, and when did that kind of light bulb go on for you in terms of your love of music?
Classic cliche of a house always being full of music. I don't ever know a time. As long as I can remember, music's always been in my life. I'm the youngest of 4 children, so there was a time where me and my 2 brothers and sister, where we all lived at home together, at the same time. My eldest brother, he'd left home by the time I was maybe 6 or something, but I definitely remember a time where, there was me and my next brother who was... So say when I was 5, he'd have been 12, my other brother. My sister had been 14, my eldest brother had been 16. So they all played music and all different types. I was always into it, my parents were into it. I can actually remember this where we used to have, so obviously the big thing then was just pop music, as far as I'm aware of, But pop music was so diverse as well, there was all kinds of stuff in there. But so this was before I could read. I'd be like a couple of years old, maybe 3, 4 years old, if that, I don't know. It's a long time, but I can actually remember doing it. I'd know what the records were, so they'd shuffle the 45s like a pack of cards and then hold them up to me. And I'd be like, Gary Glitter, Mud, The Sweet, David Essex or whatever was it. So I was and we had one of those old gramophone record player things where, you know, it's a piece of furniture in it, but you lift the lid up, it's got a record player in it. Little section for where your vinyl would go. I actually remember being freaked out, but kind of in a good way, like intrigued as well. Even though I knew the record player was in there and you put a record on and you could leave the lid top up, but I'd put the lid down and then just kind of imagine these like little people like Morph off Take Art or something, like this little band of people like playing music in there. And that's what I was listening to. That's how this music was coming out of this little cabinet. So I was always into music. I think as far as I know, I think I was 6 or 7 when my sister bought me Saturday Night Fever, which I was already obsessed with, for my 7th birthday, I think. So that was the first time I remember where I was like, that was the start of my record collection. Yeah. It's like, all right, this...
Great record to start it
mine. With. And, well, a crazy thing had happened. I watched South Bank Show with Melvin Bragg.
Yeah.
I obviously should have been in bed at the time this was on. I was like 6 years old or something. And for some reason, I'm still up. This is on a Sunday night. And Melvin Bragg speaking to Robert Stigwood, who produced it, and made Saturday Night Fever. And they showed some clips of the film. And I was just like, wow, this is for me. You know, it was showing all the obvious clips, you know, in the clubs dancing. I was just, even at that age and that music, with being too young to know anything, I was like, this is amazing. So I was waiting for it to come round. And when the film came out, it was an 18. Right?
Yeah, it's quite a dark film. You watch it now, there's some dark stuff in that.
I mean, they don't even call them 18s. Back then, I think
like an X or something, maybe.
Yeah, it was an X, actually. Yeah, you're right. I remember it coming around. I was like, oh, I got it. I couldn't go watch it. My sister went. My mum and dad went to see it at the cinema. I couldn't go. But they bought me the album. And on the inside, on the gatefold sleeve, was like lots of images from the film. Lots of stills of him dancing. And over this period of a few months, while all the singles are being released off the album, the film's out, the film's hot. You know, first of all, it's Staying Alive, then it's, you know, How Deep Is Your Love, whatever it is. There was about 4 or 5 singles from the film that got released. And each video would be showing more scenes from the film on top of the pop. So I kind of made up in my head what the film was and how it happened and what went where. And I used to copy the pictures. I was obsessed, massively, like fanatical. But the funny thing is, actually, in terms of music, that never left. Whenever I got into something, I was into it.
Yeah.
So that was when I was 7. For example, like a couple of years later, when I was into like by 79, when the specials first came out and the whole two-tone thing, you know, I'd be looking at who produced records. I'd be reading the small print, who's on the credits, who wrote it. What does that actually mean? Yeah. You know, why is this guy's name in brackets? What does that mean? And everything about it. I knew whatever band I was into. I knew everything about every member in them, just like proper nerdy.
Yeah, and those vinyl albums kind of allowed that as well for you to like just sit there and absorb, like you said, all the pictures from the gatefold, who did what did these things mean, give you kind of like a background and understanding without even realising at the time that it's kind of seeding that.
That, but also being able to just create a whole little, I mean, so obviously we're talking about Saturday Night Fever there, but just other records as well, you know, other groups and, you know.
And you mentioned before, you just mentioned the specials there, and before the mics came on, you mentioned about the Jam and being a mod and kind of moving into that scene. I mean,
the Jam, so I knew about the Jam from the start. My brother, their second single, that's how nerdy I am, but their second single was a track called All Around the World. And I remember my brother, the next one up from me, who's 7 years older than me, I remember him buying that and bringing that single home in 77, so I'm like 6. I remember looking at it and reading on the back, and because like the opening line of the song is all over the country, what a new direction and a new creation and a new reaction, and it said action create, you know, on the back. I was like, what does that mean? But also at the same time, it's like Boomtown Rats and Kate Bush and all that other kind of stuff that was going on in 70s pop. But like 2 years later, by 79, was the whole two-tone thing, which all kind of happened at the same time. You had the Specials, Bad Manners, Selector, Body Snatchers, the Beat, you know, Madness, Zeitgeist kind of thing. It's like all these different towns, from London to Coventry to Birmingham, you know, all doing this same two-tone ska thing, but kind of unknowingly. And then comes 70, you know, once it started happening, then they become aware of each other. Yeah. In different towns doing a similar thing, which was the connection. So I got into that, but that was all short-lived. That started in 79, the two-tone thing. By 1980, certainly by 81, it was all over. Certainly the two-tone and the label was all over. There was a kind of only madness that survived that, and they'd become something else. So then I went back to the Jam. I was 10 years old, and they were the first live gig I ever went to see when I was 11. Just before they split up, I saw them.
Where was that?
Leeds Queen's Hall. It's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Big hall where people that did have car exhibitions and record fairs and all kinds of things, and loads of people played there as well in Leeds. So I saw them there when I was 11. So yeah, so I was like massively into them, fanatical about them, and then kind of as they went into the Star Council.
Yeah, what were your feelings on that?
Yeah, I liked all that jazzy stuff that they were doing, and it also opened me up to other styles of music at a really early age.
Yeah.
In fact, I got, without a doubt, without Paul Weller, I probably wouldn't have found certain styles of music in the way that I did. Do you know what I mean? Because I was fanatical about him, because I was just that young, and he was the thing. That's what I was into.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, they used to do One Nation Under a Groove, Funkadelic, as an encore. I remember going to seeing them in Nottingham. I bought the programme, and it was saying in the programme, it mentioned about George Clinton, Funkadelic.
Yeah.
So I didn't know who they were. And then almost like serendipity, it was like within, I can't remember, but it didn't say, it seemed like within no time at all, it was like, I've read this programme, and it also name-checked Jimmy Cliff, which at this stage I was unaware of. Yeah, pretty much at the same time, I was at a friend of my mum's, and I was going through their records, and I was like, brand spanking version of Jimmy Cliff, the harder they come. I was like, oh wow, and she was like, oh, take it, you can have it.
No way.
I was like, really? And then scrolled on a couple more records, and it was Funkadelic, One Nation Under a Groove, the album. She was like, take it. So
wow.
I had them, and other things as well that I'd just read, that, you know, because we didn't have internet and stuff like that then, you know, not, you know, TV wasn't really giving you much. But I used to do record fairs just without even being able to afford records, just seeing what's going on. And because a lot of the record fairs and that back then were like about rare records and bootleg recordings of gigs and stuff. So I'd just go along and look at that and see what we're about, and look at artwork and stuff, and just daydream on that. And maybe years later come, oh, that's that. It's like unfinished business. So always into musical, and always fanatical about whatever it was. Same as when I got into, you know, I had a spell where I was like lived and breathed reggae. I was like, that's it. I had dreads. So yes, I was really fanatical about that. That's when I was 16, and then, you know, 2 years into that was when I first went to the Hacienda for the first time, and I was kind of like, and that was it, game changer. Yeah. And I guess here we are. I mean, here we are from that. You know.
So what year was that? So that was the first discovery of house music at the Hacienda, that first visit, would you say? Or really what drew you there in the first place?
Serendipity again, actually, because not what it was about. That's not what I got there. That was just the surprise. That was the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
You know, we went there to meet some girls, basically. Some girls from Blackpool. So we're from Leeds. These girls are from Blackpool. Manchester's in the middle. And these girls were like, oh, have you heard of a club called Hacienda? I was like, no. And they said, well, why don't we meet there? And, you know, it's halfway for you, it's halfway for us. Yeah. So it was like, all right, cool. Let's do that. And I remember it. Everything about that, obviously I can speak about it fondly, but it's like everything about that summer was amazing. It was like, you know...
So this was the summer of...
89.
Yeah.
It was a heat wave as well. It was like really hot. And you could feel it in the air that something was happening before the papers had got hold of it, and before it had been coined in the media and that. You could just sense it. You could feel it in the air. And it was... I'd never actually been outside of Leeds for a night out. I'd only ever been to Manchester once before, I think, as a kid, and I went on a coach with my mum. So that was a big deal as well. Just kind of like, I remember it crystal clear, because it was this, you know, it's still broad daylight, because it was midsummer. Well, I say midsummer. This was like, I don't know, April, May of 89, and listening to Jeff Young on Radio 1, who Pete Tong took over from, and so he used to play really cool stuff, and he you know, playing some cool housey bits, and. So yeah, it was totally by accident. We got there, never saw the girls, never actually saw them at all. And I remember just like, so we must have got an address for it somewhere. So we're asking people, we're on Deansgate. We're like, do you know where Whitworth Street is? Or you know where the Hacienda is? And so yeah, go down there, turn left. And we got pointed down this road, this little cobbled street that was over the road from the Hacienda, kind of round the corner and over the road. And first thing I saw was this guy like tucking an air horn down his pants. And the thing is, the Hacienda was not a ravey thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever people might think, it wasn't a rave. Oh, this was before rave had been coined, so it wasn't that, right? Yeah. It wasn't all glow sticks and whistles and that. It wasn't that. But there was a few air horns in that summer, as good as they were. They were great. But I remember seeing this guy, and he's tucking him down, and he was just like really buzzed. He's like, "You all right, mate?" I'm like, "Yeah." It was like we've just come from Leeds, where everyone's still drinking and like fighting each other and stuff. It's like, this is all a bit weird. Everyone's a bit. We hadn't even got in the club, and you could already feel it. Like, where are you from?
Yeah. So
like, oh, we just drove from Leeds. Where are you from? He's like, oh, from Blackburn. All right, and he's tucking his hair on down his pants. I'm thinking, I've never seen anyone in a club with their hair on like that. This is what's going on here. And then we went round the corner, and there must have been about 1,000 people queuing outside this club already. Like, just I was like, what is going on here? I've never seen a queue like this for a club before it's open. I've never seen a club like that. I've never seen a queue like that for a club. Never mind one, before it's open. So the whole thing was exciting. Like, ooh, what are we? And just checking everyone out. I remember how mixed the queue was. Loads of black people in the queue as well as white people and everything else in between. Lots of different styles because it had not quite become just that acid house thing. Mm-hmm. So you still had different groups of dancers in clubs. So there's a bunch of people in like spats and jazz clothes doing formation jazz dancing and all that kind of thing. Yeah. And then you got people with like guys with like long hair. I've got long bobs and Converse and stuff like that, and that baggy look, and everyone just looked really cool. And I was like, this looks the dogs, and I've not even got in there, right? And then obviously the club opens and the windows are rattling, and I'm like, what is this? And as you walk, so eventually we get in. Maybe we're queued for an hour or something, and there was no late licensing then as well, so the club was only open from 9 till 2. Mm. And she walked in because it was an old boat factory, and originally, and it kind of kept that warehouse look of the house. As you walked in, there were like these long plastic these rubber curtains, see-through.
Oh right, okay, yeah. I know what you mean.
And they're all scratched and dirty and stuff. You could see the silhouettes and the lights kind of bouncing off it, and I kind of pulled them back, and it was just like it was off. I was like, wow, what is this? What is this place? And I was like, that's it, that'll do me. This is home for me. Yeah. And it was for years after, but just on so many levels, it was like I'd already been, I was where I'd been able to pick up bits of house leading up until that point. I was already getting the bug. I was listening to some pirate radio stations in Leeds that were playing a lot of like DJ Fast Eddie and stuff like that, stuff like Unit 3 from Bradford, and I knew Nightmares on Wax. They were playing at the warehouse in Leeds. Even back then, clubs were different. There was no house club that played house all night, and no DJ that actually kind of nailed it to that level. So you go to clubs, you'd have the clubs that were only open till 2. They'd have 4 DJs or 5 DJs. One would play rock, one would play indie, one would play soul. You get half an hour of house, so you'd have to stand in a club and wait for your turn, for another hour and a half, 2 hours to get half an hour, and you'd get the old, same old what was about, Love Can't Turn Around, and a few obvious things like that, Jackie Body maybe or whatever, but it's still good and exciting. So I was kind of like, I was getting there with it, and then when I went to the Hacienda, I mean, everything about it, the club, but just music aside, the music was just like next level to me. It was just so exciting, and I was instantly kind of just like, what is going on? Because I'd never heard a DJ mix like constantly. Yeah. Right. And at this point, I had no idea about beat matching, so I didn't realise that to get a nice kind of seamless blend, you've got to be in time. So I was just like, these guys are magicians. I'm like, what? I'm like, whoa, like, how creative are they? What must they be thinking to even do this stuff with records? And they were playing acapellas and stuff. Obviously, I didn't know what acapellas was. I was like, how come every other record's got, come on, let's work? I'm like, every record's got that on it. And it was like, I heard Doug Lazy get it wrong about 6 times, but it was the acapella over stuff. And that was instant. And like, every week I'd go, we'd be on the stage dancing. I'd be tapping my mates. I'd be hanging off my mates' shoulders, just pointing at the booth going, have you heard that? Have you heard that? Every time there'd be a mix. Have you heard that? And it'd be like, even what I've realised now is like, because it was like the standards were being set, so there was nothing to compare it to. So there was no room for snobbiness.
Yeah.
All of it was amazing. It had not got to the point where you could go, oh no, that was a bit pony. That that was all right. It's like no, it was all good. So even now, what we'd say is a bad mix or something that didn't work, actually, that I have no idea at what point that came on the radar of being able to even be dissatisfied with something, in terms of like, oh, I won't put that with that, or there were none of that. It's quite in a I guess in a naive way as well, really, because there were like really good mixes. Now in hindsight, when I listen back to those tapes, it'd be like really good mixes, really good creative mixes that work. And then really bonkers mixes that you just now you'd be just like, oh my God, there's no way I'd do that. Yeah. But at the time, it didn't matter. So, because there'd be like such good music, but such a broad spectrum of music that was the thing about the Hacienda. I guess now you can listen back and go, well, that's not this record or that record. But at the time, it was just all house.
Yeah.
So there'd be like tempos would drop. For example, the very first time I went, I remember Keep On Moving, Soul to Soul, being the last record, but I didn't know who Soul to Soul were.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of Soul to Soul, so they didn't have any track. It wasn't long. It was probably a week later, I bought that album, Club Classics, which became the soundtrack to 89, and then off the back of that, you had Back to Life and all that obviously became huge. But at this point, they weren't in the charts. I didn't know who they were, but I remember just like, from all this crazy acid house to like last tune, really slow. They do that a lot in there. They play all kinds of tempos up and down, but it really didn't matter. If anything, it was great to just have out of nowhere, you got a really slow ace record, and then the next thing's another nutty Belgian track or something. We're off again.
Just that mixture, I think, like you said, even I never had the opportunity to go as a kind of just before my era, but you listen to tapes and things like that, and it is surprising, like tapes from like 89, 90 or whatever, it is surprising the breadth of stuff that's being played. There is like all this what we deem as kind of classic house now, but there's a lot of, there's R&B, they drop it down, playing old school hip hop,
loads of hip hop in there,
and hip house and all this kind of stuff, and it's a real kind of mixture. It's just like, okay, well, we get all these records, we just chuck it together, we like it, have some of that. Whereas I think it's kind of these days, and we'll kind of move us talk about like where the current scene is now, I think it's just all like one flavour all night sometimes, and that can be like, you want to, for me, I love that mixture that you get, and it might be a bonkers mix or change the vibe or whatever. If it works in the context of that night, then it's great. I mean, I'm personally, for me, I feel really, really blessed to be able to have witnessed that, but also to have been, because even before the Hacienda, right? So I remember clubs before we had house clubs. So it was just, you got a DJ, and this was a good night out. We're not like, oh, that was pony. It's like this was a good night out. So you go to a club, you got your DJ playing. He's on the mic all night talking in and out of records. Everything he's playing is from the top 40 at that point. A few classics. And then it's funny, I was thinking about this earlier on today, because I was thinking, I wonder what we're going to speak about and stuff. And I was just kind of just reflecting. I was like, wow, I remember like, it'd be standard for a nightclub. It'd be like, we'd take the mickey, call it the erection section. And it was like, all right, erection section. Last 3 records are going to be smooch records. And you got to, now's your time to kind of sober up a little bit and grab some girl that's on her own and have a dance and get off with her. Do you know what I mean? That was that culture. And then, so to be able to get to witness it, and then be at the Hacienda and see clubs that just play that music all night, but still be able to program things in that way, and and take some dips and turns. So I'm glad that I witnessed that, because I still, when I've got the balls, I still try and do that in places. I'll play a sound effect or an a cappella or something that'll allow me to get from one place to another if the tempos are different. So I'm glad that I got to witness that as well. But I think for me, I've always had good residencies as well. So that's been a good way of being able to, maybe not do it all in one set, but it's like if you're playing a warm up or something, or the last set or the middle set, you get to do different things. Yeah. So you're at the Hacienda. It's blown your mind. You point at the DJ booth. Did you walk out and be like, that's what I want to do?
Yeah. Probably. but I didn't realise I was going to do it, obviously, and I didn't know anybody else that had decks at that point, so that it wasn't quite common.
Yeah.
How that was going to happen. It wasn't so much the first visit, maybe the second or... I mean, I was totally intrigued by it, but maybe the second or third visit when I realised what everybody else was getting up to in there.
Yeah.
And I kind of experienced it from that angle. And then I was like, right, okay. I want to be that guy then. Yeah. I want to be the guy who's controlling this club and deciding who feels what and when, based on what they're playing and when they play it and how they play it. I was like, I want to be that guy. So it kind of came from there.
So tell me about when you took the plunge and bought some decks and was like, okay, I'm going to do this.
I bought my decks at the end of 1990. I bought them off Sasha, actually. Me and him became friends. He lived around the corner from me, and a friend of mine who I'm still good friends with, a guy called Tony Annan. He used to run a night in Leeds called Up Your Ronson, which I used to play at. But before, back in '89, Tony was one of the first guys, if not the first guy, to start doing like one-off parties and bringing in DJs. So he kind of broke Sasha. No one in Leeds knew who Sasha was until Tony brought him from Manchester to Leeds. And at this point, Sasha wasn't really big in Manchester either. He's still young. So anyway, we through that kind of connection and just cracking on and stuff. When it'd be over, we became mates, and then I ended up moving there, and then to Manchester. And then the girl that I was going out with was also friends with him. And I was also really good friends with Marie, the girl he was seeing. So we were all matey. He came up there, he had some decks to sell. He was going to buy some new ones. So I was like, I'll buy them off you then. So I bought them off him. And also, I used to live with a guy in Manchester called Cass. I was totally in the right place at the right time, right? So I'd already kind of made myself known to Mike Pickering and Graham Park at the Hacienda, just through knocking on the DJ box door and going, what's this, and have you got a mixtape, and just pestering them every week from the age of 18. But fast forward a couple of years, but when I'm like 20, I'm now living with the guy that was their driver.
Right.
He was Mike's driver, so he used to drive Mike on a Friday and drive Graham on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So on a Friday, Mike Pickering had always come to my flat first to get Cass, and then we'd go to the Hacienda together. Every Friday for a couple of years, without fail, they'd come back to my flat. And at this time, there was also like Rob Gretton, who was like New Order's manager and who bought the club. He'd be coming back to my flat, and people like Bernard and from New Order and stuff like that. But just young and naive, it's like meant nothing to me. It really, I say it's still done. I mean, it's nice, but it was no big deal for me. They want a big deal. I was fully aware of New Order and all that kind of thing. And I didn't really know about Rob because I didn't really know the history of the club. I knew who he was. But the point is, so I had all these really influential and creative people passing through my flat every weekend. And I had my deck set up in the corner and I'm just finding my way. So every time they'd come back to my flat, so the club would finish at 2, we'd probably get out of there and get home to my flat for maybe 3. And then I'd be like, we'd have a little party and I'd be DJing. So I'd be like, right, it's my turn now to kind of showcase my terrible skills. So I used to do that. And then on a Friday, that was on a Friday, on a Saturday, Graham had come back. So he used to normally, he'd always have record industry bods with him, people, A&R people and stuff like that, from Simon Gavin and Kevin Dawson and people like that from record companies. So they'd always be back. They'd always be buttering me up, giving me promos and nasty tapes and stuff like that because they're in my flat, so they kind of feel obliged. But like I said, I didn't really know any DJs at the time. So when the first opportunity, I guess, came for a slot at the Hacienda, I guess I was the likely candidate for a stand-in, really. It's like, that's Buckley. Yeah. Because the first time I was thinking about this. I think I played once at, they do a thing called In the City once a year that Tony Wilson set up. It's like Manchester's version of the Miami Winter Conference, I guess, where, the city gets taken over from live bands and labels and showcasing this and that. And Deconstruction did a night at the Hacienda, like a Thursday night, and K-Class and some other artists on Deconstruction played there. But the guy that was running it, Kevin Dawson, he asked me to play because from previous visits to my flat through Mike Pickering, it was like, So that was the first gig, and then which wasn't really for the Hacienda. It was an outside thing, but I played there upstairs in the main room. And then Tom Wainwright, I used to warm up for Graham. He went on holiday, and Graham for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And Graham rang me up once, and he was just like, "Do you want to stand in for Tom?" I was like, "Oh God!" Yeah, I was like, "Do I?" So this was like, this was like, I don't know, maybe 91, 91, I think. Yeah. Really good time for the Hacienda, and like, because Graham used to do, when I first started going to the Hacienda, Graham and Mike used to play together, nude on a Friday back to back. And then it closed for a bit with all the trouble and stuff at the end of 90, and then opened up again. And when it opened, it changed. It was Mike stayed Fridays, Graham had the Saturday to himself, and the Saturday became like there was a little more of a shoppy crowd and that, but the Saturday, was huge. The club was packed, so I caught it. And they didn't do guests really. Loads of people claimed to have played, and that they played the toilet or they played downstairs. But it's like the Hacienda had Mike Fricker and Graham Park. They were the residents, and some people came and played for outside promoters and stuff, really.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't really happening. It was more of a residence club. So to get that opportunity to play there was amazing. So that was kind of the first time I played there.
Did you think, I've arrived now, this is it? And can you remember anything you played?
Yeah, I can actually. Yeah, I can remember a few things that I played. I remember being really nervous and self-conscious when Graham came in the booth. Like he's about to take over. I'm like shaking and just like, nervous of the mix. Am I going to drop a beat? I'd certainly got to grips with it by that point. But yeah, I was nervous as hell. And I don't think I thought at that time that I made it. I don't know if I ever thought that early. Yeah, I remember playing, I've got it down there actually. I remember playing, there's a track by DJ's Rule called Get Into the Music. I remember playing the B-side of that, which is called That's It. And I remember playing a track by Jamie Principle called Let's Get Intimate with some E-smooth mixes, and I kind of just played like a dub. The good thing about the Hacienda was like the art of warming up. The Hacienda was warm up. It's like either Mike and Graham warmed up for themselves, and the warm-ups were, I don't know if I'd say just as good, but the warm-ups were great. I used to love listening to the warm-ups.
Yeah.
They were, there was nothing boring about the warm-up. It's just a different, different kind of...
I love like having that warm-up wash over. You get into a club kind of early in inverted commas, but just to kind of prepare you for what's going to come. I love playing warm-ups as well. Warm-ups are great, especially if you've got a long set. You can't go wrong, or you shouldn't go wrong from a warm-up. There's that you shouldn't do really, because you're not taking over from anyone. You're not like, people have got locked into a certain kind of vibe of someone else, and now you've come and messed around with it, and it takes them half an hour to get them back on your side. Or there's none of that. Yeah, it's like, this is where we're starting, this is where we're going. So each president comes in and they're kind of either from the start or over time they kind of get on your wavelength. So it's one of those things that really just picks momentum from the moment people go coming in. Yeah. So you get to that point where you go, right, there's enough people on the floor now, I'm going to flip it. Oh, right, okay, I've only got 40 minutes left before the guest takes over. I'll start picking it up. Showcasing my skills a little bit. But certainly in the Hacienda, there was definitely no sign of like try to take the glory. It was like an unspoken thing, but it was totally respected. It was like, no, you went there and warmed up. Yeah, that's it. You warmed up. You didn't play. You didn't go in there playing hits. It wasn't about that. Not if you wanted to warm up there again, not at all. You know what I mean? Was there ever any moments where obviously there were like live acts, a lot of live acts that played there, like Inner City, 10 City, like those kind of guys, and a lot of people have said that they played there, but there were some kind of people that would pass through. Were you ever kind of starstruck in any way? Was there ever any?
Absolutely never.
Yeah.
If you wanted to call it starstruck, the only time. And it wasn't with the Hacienda, it was with Howard Marks. Me and Howard became really good mates. He moved to Leeds, really, really good friends. And he was good friends with Dave Beer from Back to Basics, where obviously I was resident. And so a friend of mine, Billy Idle, who used to live with Howard, and I'd not seen Billy for a few years, and he got in touch with me, and he was like, oh, I'm in Leeds. And it was when Howard was doing his first ever Mr. Nice tour off the first book. He's like, I'm in Leeds without, and I used to watch this documentary on Howard Marks whilst he was still in prison. So he only became the figure that he was when he got out of prison. Yeah. Obviously, his history was, UK's most wanted #1 and all that. But that was in the 70s. People didn't know about that, really. And we used to watch this documentary that had been made about him, about the way he was arrested. And you know, what a deviant he was and all this kind of thing. And now he had the police fooled. And so me and my mates used to just sit and getting stoned watching it. And we thought he was ace when we were like 17, 18. And then years later, I mean, he's in Leeds. So anyway, I went and met him and we had some food, and he invited me along to his talk that night in Bradford. So I went to his hotel room, and he gave me a bit of hash. He was like, "There you go, boyo." And I was like, started telling me like how good this hash is, and I'm like, "Oh," because that was his thing. He was never into weed. So I was like, so he gives me this big chunk, and then he was like, "Would you like a little line?" A little line. So he starts chopping them out on in his hotel room, and I had to stop him, and I went, "Do you know what?" I said, "I just got to say something." I said, "This is really surreal." I said, "Never get starstruck." I said, "But I'm in a room with Howard Marks, who's like the world's biggest drug dealers. You just give me some hash and you reckon me a line out." I'm like, I'm pretty like stopped in my tracks at the minute, but which is totally separate. I just went off on one with that. But other than that, absolutely not. No. I had a funny. So I played at the ICA on the Mall. This was actually one of the first. Well, I say one of the first. I don't know, but it's early doors. I did a Hacienda tour. I think it's the only time I've ever been to the ICA. I was with Mike Pickering, and I can't remember who else was playing. I think Tom Wainwright, a couple of other DJs. So it was a Hacienda night, but there was also like this art exhibition going on, and it was packed with all these celebs and like Fergal Sharkey and all these kind of people, and Martin Fry, who's the lead singer of ABC. You know, the Look of Love.
Yeah.
Right. So him and Mike Pickering go back. They grew up together. I think both from Altrincham or something like that, and they're old friends. So we're in the Mall, and not the Mall. We're in the ICA on the Mall. I can't remember who played first, but we was trying to find somewhere to go to the toilet to go and have a nose up, and we're like, can't find anywhere. It's packed in here. It's like, and we were with Paul Hurd, who was Mike's partner in M People. So Paul said, "Oh," he goes, "I don't live too far from here. Well, why don't we just jump in the car, go to our house, do what we need to do, and come back?" So I was like, "Oh, all right." So there's me, Paul Hurd, Mike Pickering, and Martin Fry from ABC. So I'm thinking, I can't wait to tell my brother this, that I've been having a little carry on with Martin Fry. And I was like, my brother bought me the ABC album Lexicon of Love for like my 13th Christmas when I was like 13. I was like, this is off the chain. So we go to Paul's house, do what we needed to do, jump back in the car, and we go back. But we've all got these ICA stickers on, right? Like, so we'd come out of a side door because it was just packed, like chaos. And so as we're walking back in, this doorman, this big black guy stood there. He goes, "Can't come in." We're like, "ICA, mate," showing his coat, opening his coats, ICA. And Martin Fry didn't have one on him. And he's a big unit as well. He's like, I don't know, 6'4" or something like this. And he didn't mean to be aggressive, but it was a bit steaming as well. And so Dorman's like, "Yeah, come in, yeah." And then Martin went like that and kind of patted his face and slapped his face. But as he did it, he went, "Martin Fry, ABC," and went like that. And this Dorman just went, "Oof," and punched him. Like, I knocked him, and I was just like, "Oh my God, my brother's really not going to believe this now." Do you know what I mean? It was like as if that's just happened. As if, I was like, if someone had told me when I was 13, listening to Lexicon of Love, that 8 years later, I'm going to be doing all that and watching him get knocked out whilst I'm out with him, I was just like, "You're joking, aren't you?"
So we talked about Hacienda. How long were you resident there for?
So I played for Graham, warming up for Tom in 91, 91, 92. And then I must have played again, because I played the 11th birthday with like Morales and Knuckles and Tony Humphreys and all this. And there was about 12 of us that played, and everyone that played had played the club that year. So that was kind of the idea behind the lineup.
Yeah.
Was like maybe a couple of the Americans were kind of like the icing on the cake who hadn't played. So that just shows you how many guests played the club. Do you know what I mean? It's like not many at all. So I must have already played there that year to get that booking. But what happened was on that, so that was also my 22nd birthday, because as I told you earlier, we share the same birthday, me and the Hacienda. So the 11th birthday, which I played on, was also my 22nd birthday. That was also the night that Mike Pickering left. And when he left, so there was a guy called Russ who used to warm up for Mike. So when Mike left, Russ kind of moved into Mike's spot, and I kind of moved into Russ's spot.
Yeah.
So I was kind of doing it's kind of just this unspoken thing. It's just
Yeah.
respect. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to step in there and be playing the last set. Do you know what I mean? It's like, just like that. So then that happened, and that lasted for a few weeks while the club were trying to work out what to do, because Mike left randomly. He left because there was some trouble that night on the birthday, and someone had thrown a bottle at Morales or something, and at the same time somebody had done something to Mike, and he'd been there for years. So I know he was starting M people and all that, and he was just like, "Do you know what, I'm over it."
Yeah.
And he left, kind of thing. So there was a time when I was so we kind of stepped in, so the club was still open while they were working it out, and then I got told that me and Russ, that like both of us, it was like, oh, we're going to have to let you go. And like Alistair Whitehead and Tim Lennox stepped in. But it was just when Alistair was just before he became really big, but he was already like well respected. But I don't know if it was, he's probably going to hate me for saying this, but the weird thing is they had me back the next week, but they didn't. Russ didn't come back, so maybe not the next week. But we both got, let's not say sacked, but we both got let go. I remember getting like Paul Mason, who was the manager of the club. I remember like I have to go meet Paul Mason. I'm like, oh right, ooh, big time now. I'm going to meet Paul Mason. I'm like, check this out. I'm like thinking, what's he going to offer me? And he sacked me. I was nearly in tears. I was like, well, that was short-lived. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
But like I said, very quickly they asked me back. And then I was doing some Fridays, and then Saturdays, I'd played downstairs in the Gay Traitor. I don't know the years actually. You was asking what year, so I think, I don't know, it's a bit sporadic, but probably till maybe, I'm guessing here, but maybe till 95, 96.
Yeah.
Because I know the club closed in 97, and I moved back to Leeds end of 96, beginning of 97. And I don't seem to have any real memory of the last year in Manchester and Hacienda. So I think, where up until that point, I was like, if I were gigging, I was a gig, and then in Hacienda. If I wasn't gigging, I was just in Hacienda anyway. But I don't know, in that last year, I know I did have a manager at that point and an agent, and kind of was getting a lot of work. But I think I was kind of over the Hacienda a little bit at that point. It had definitely changed and become. It wasn't what drew me to it, but now it had also become like home and with family there. Where go there, do what you want.
Yeah.
Go in there and just spend all night in the lighting box. Me and my mate Jay, he's coming here on Friday actually. We're still really good mates with him. Every week we'd be like, all we've done is sitting here all night, like watching it from over, because the lighting box was right. The lighting box and the DJ box were the same, but it just had a little partition and a bit of glass.
Okay.
And the DJ booth was like a third of the size. The lighting box was like really long. The lighting box was like 3 times longer than the DJ box, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was all part of it. It looked like a big hotel from Monopoly. That's what it always reminded me of, that this little felt roof. But we'd just sit in there, and we could go in there and order drinks and not pay for them and all that kind of thing. And every week we thought we were living the life, getting Moe, which is now just like, oh my God, Moe, it's like the worst. It's like drinking sick, isn't it? And we'd be like, at the end of the night, we're like giving it the big, and it's like, can we give us 3 bottles of champagne? And they never used to charge us. They'd be like, just take it or replace it. Yeah. So we've got a Sainsbury's or something where you could get it for about 16 quid a bottle and just buy it and take it back. But yeah, I think I was over it.
Yeah.
At that point.
I mean, so you'd been there, you'd seen it go through from as a punter from the very beginning to almost the very end. Obviously, all the different genres of house music and everything, how much it had changed over that time as well, and how quickly things had changed.
Yeah.
Was it, were there any bits where everyone, when they think about their clubbing days, sometimes always like, oh, it's better in my day or whatever. Were there ever any eras where it's like, oh, I much preferred it then, or did it always be fun?
Always 89. Always 89 for me, whether that's just because that were kind of my real first year into it. But even still, when I'm not one for living in the past, no matter what this might sound like. Certainly when I'm DJing and that, I'm not. It might come through in other ways, but I'm not just like playing old records. I'm not into that. But like that section of tracks down there in the bottom right, they're all Hacienda tunes. If I pulled any of them out, right, probably actually, if we was to start pulling them out, I bet none of them go past 93. Right now I'm saying this, but like when I listen to them, it's like they still excite me. Them records, they still sound good. You don't have to know what they are. There was just so much good music in '89. One thing that does amaze me is, like, it's a silly analogy, but like the Beatles were going like And Beatles were only going like 4 or 5 years or something.
Yeah.
They did so many albums and so many looks and different styles in such a short space of time. For me, the Hacienda was like that. It's like 1990 was completely different to 89. 89, all this amazing music being made. By the start of 19... don't get me wrong, throughout the music was amazing. Well, not all of it. But when it came to 1990, there was a period at the start of 1990 where tempos dropped right down to like Soul to Soul style. You know, you had, Ghetto Heaven and Family Standard, things like that. You know, and there was some great, Chimes, Heaven and stuff like that. But, you know, people like Morales and Knuckles and all that, they were all doing like these like 1.5, 110 BPM remixes. And that was really cool, kicking back with the Taxman Devotion, all that kind of thing. So you got all that bonkers stuff, eclectic stuff going on in 89, so dropping it right down, smooth, groovy, Nelly Hooper Productions, all that kind of thing. To 1990, to then back up into, cheeky, acidy stuff, you know what I mean? And I think what really doesn't stand up for me is the whole sound of the mid-90s.
Well, some of it's so fast as well, you listen to it now.
I was just going to say, I did a mix CD for Love to Be in Sheffield, which I was also a resident at. I did a fortnightly residency there in about the mid-90s, about 95. But it was a big deal for me. It was like still before days of digital and that, right? So it's like, you can go in HMV and buy this. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I've made it. There's actually a display in HMV in Leeds just of this CD. I'm walking in, I'm like, didn't have a camera on my phone back then to take a photo of it, or probably didn't even have a phone then. And I found the Love to Be CD, so I was like, I'll play it to my partner, and I stuck it on. I was like, oh my God, but luckily on a CDJ, I can slow it down. I'm like, as if I started at 130 BPM on this, and ended up about 136. I'm like, these tracks weren't made at that speed. Why am I playing them like that? Yeah,
it's nuts how it has ebbed and flowed, and it's really kind of been rolled back like recently. So you've been a regular DJ at the Hacienda. What kind of came next? Didn't you play the first Renaissance?
Yeah, I played the first set of the first ever Renaissance. I mean, Jeff Oakes, who did Renaissance, was my mate. That's how I got on board. He was like, I'm doing this night. And he was also we were all mates, me, him and Sasha. And we used to go and see Sasha play Shelley's on a Friday. Jeff lived in Stoke. Shelley's is in Stoke. We'd go back to Jeff's afterwards. With Sasha, crack on all weekend. Sasha had cancelled his Saturday gig. And just stay there in Stoke, partying, playing in the bedroom with us, all going back to back. And then Jeff came up with the idea that he was going to do Renaissance. I don't think any of us really thought about like how big it'd be, or it's just great timing. It was like clubs were still finishing at 2. It weren't happening. A club all night that starts at midnight and goes on till 6 in the morning or something. You got Sasha as a resident, because he was like busy, like mainly just in the UK, like up and down like every single place you could think of. It's like everyone wanted Sasha on, so it was like everything just kind of fell into place. So yeah, they were a good 6 months there, and then they started getting too big, and kind of nudged me out, made their excuses. I've been playing there about 6 months, and this was probably like my best set. I remember like where it was just one of those where everything was just perfect, and I was playing before 10 City, and 10 City is still to this day best PA I've ever seen. Right? And I smoked a spliff in a DJ booth, which I did every week anyway. Yeah. And then whilst 10 City were playing, so I'm in the booth having a joint, and the owners there never said anything at the time. And the following week when I went back, the doorman stopped me. He was like, "No, you can't come in, mate." I'm like, "I'm DJing." He was like, "No, you're not allowed in." I was like, "What for?" He said, "Smoking a joint here last week." I was like, "What? Really?" So that was that. That ended Renaissance. Funny thing is, though, Jeff Oakes. So that was in '92. 10 years later, New Year's Day. Well, actually, it was in November or something like that of 2011. I get a phone call, and I can't tell you what he said, but it was something that he would have said back in the day, and I knew straight away who it was, and it was Jeff. I just burst out laughing. And he was like, "How are you, mate?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking great. I'm great. I'm like, what do you want? I was like, "It's great to hear from you." And he said, "I'm doing a party on New Year's Day at the warehouse in Leeds with like Jesse Rose and Derek Carter." And I released on Jesse's label, and Derek Carter's one of my favourite DJs. And I was like, "Yeah, of course I'll do it." So yeah, came full circle. 10 years later, he books me again, And the funny, I was gonna. That's another story. But let's just say, yeah, he books me 10 years later, and that was that.
You could tell me that one when we turned the mics off.
Well, no, what I was going to say was, but I actually got it wrong. What I was going to say was, he booked me and then ended up in a pickle, but it wasn't that at all. It was Dave Beer that ended up in the pickle, right? So I'd played at Basics on New Year's Eve, 2011 going into 2012. So the next day I'm playing the warehouse for Jeff, obviously still up from New Year's Eve and that, like spangled, and Dave Beer comes along to meet us there, and we were in the back room. Don't know who was playing. It's not for me to say, so I can't say what he'd been indulging in, but he definitely had a little go on something without telling us, and kind of it kicked in while we were in this, and all of a sudden he's in a coma, and we're like, oh, what is going on here? And he's like, we're like, Jeff's like, fuck this, it's my party, I can't get involved in this. I'm like, it's nothing to do with me either. So like, we had to get Beer getting carried out and stuff. So yeah, that's what happened there.
Brilliant.
So not Jeff, he didn't get in a pickle actually, he just fucks me. My other boss at the time got in a pickle.
So I mean, we can come on to Basic. I don't know where it kind of falls in the timeline.
Yeah, I started playing Basics in like 2002, I think.
Oh, okay. So I suppose
so there's quite a long time. So I moved back to Leeds in '97, and I started doing my own night at the Mint Club in Leeds in '99. Me and Graham Park.
Yeah.
Which was a crazy thing as well, because like '89 I'm in the club, '99 his wife's managing me, and he's now doing his. Up until that point, his residencies had only ever been the garage in Nottingham and the Hacienda. Now me and him are doing our own night, resident only, no guest DJ policy. Right, that was it. It was like just me and him every week. We did book a few mates in the end over the couple of years, but only to kind of cover for us and stuff. We didn't book guests to come and play for the sake of having guests on. So and Dave was kind of, I'm sure Val had let it happen anyway, the owner of the club, but Dave was pretty instrumental in making that happen as well, because Basics were there on a Saturday at this point. Me and Dave were already mates. We'd been mates since '91, so we'd already been mates 10 years. But we'd like Back to Basics was such a well-respected and like such a cream of the crop for such a long time. Certainly in its first, well, it's not for me to say, in what, but the first 10 years plus, they were flying in their reputation and winning awards for their artwork and their look, and everyone wanted a piece of it. So I never ever mentioned Zabiro playing there, because I was like, well, he's my mate. He, first off, I was doing all right anyway.
Yeah.
But if truth be told, I'd have bit his hand off if he did. I was like, yeah, of course I'd play there. I'd love to play there. There was a time when they had the club on 3 floors, and like they'd be having like fucking Daft Punk on 1 floor, and like, just crazy, like cream of the crop on like every level, packing it out. But I never asked him, and he never mentioned it to me, and we'd just party and hang out together and talk shop about what he's doing and I'm doing it. We never kind of joined it. Yeah. And but he spoke to, because I told him about wanting to do the night at the Mint Club, and he kind of helped make that happen and make us get that night there. So anyway, yeah, so I stayed there as well as kind of guesting and doing other little monthly residencies here and there that I had. I was at the Mint Club, then the Mint Club closed. Well, no, actually it didn't close, but Basics left to move to a new club, and it was when they moved to the new club, which was Rehab, that I got on board. Yeah. And I ended up being resident for 11 years for them after that.
Yeah, and just in terms of thinking about being a resident somewhere, like how important do you think those kind of things are? I mean, we touched on kind of warm up and stuff like that in terms of developing a sound of a night and
absolutely. For me personally, I think it's so important. It's so important. And lucky that I always had them for years. I never really didn't have, as well as all the different little trendy things that came and went in between. I always had some really good, solid residencies from day one. And even though I started playing Basics in 2003, I'd already been DJing 12 years then. And I listen to my old mixes, and I think they're great from then. They're all vinyl. My mixing seamless, my style of music, I like what I played. I never played too many turkeys. I think it was all pretty good. But I really came into my own, I think, musically and as a DJ when I started playing at Basics. It went from, I remember Dave Beer saying to me, he was like, you've got a fan club. He goes, we've never had a resident yet where in the history of the club where people are coming to see the resident, and more importantly you. And he was like, your sound's the sound of the club, and I think I sound up it now. I never said it at the time, but I think for the time that kind of was it. I was flying flying the flag. I mean, all the rest of the residents, not taking anything away, they're all amazing. They are good, amazing. There's definitely a time where I was kind of just like on fire. Everyone was behind me, and I was really kind of just being able to, what I saw as underground and just cutting edge.
Yeah.
Just me, basically, what I wanted to be doing. I think I definitely chopped and changed a lot. Not like worlds apart, but just like, it's like when you're into music, you're into so much music, and you're taking on all this music to just spit it out in 2 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you don't even get started.
Yeah.
So I love the fact of residencies. I've been like, depends what mood I'm in. I've been like going through a tough time with my girlfriend. It's like come back and just play nasty and don't realise, I'm pissed off. And then other times where it's all going good and it's all love and light and happy days. You know what I mean? But and just be like, oh, I'm into this sound this week. It's all stuff that you've got, but it's really hard to give it all your attention all the time. So it just ends up focusing in little pockets. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think residencies are massively important. I'd be quite happy with a residency. In fact, when I was resident at Basics, you'd go and play other clubs and it just, it won't come close. Even like when I was resident for We Love Sundays and I was playing the Terrace, even like the first I don't know if it was first guest slot or first gig as resident for We Love, but it was a wicked lineup with I think Jeff Mills and Cassius and Danny Owls and Leo and Bushwhacker and all, and then me at the end. I was like, as if I got the last set after Leo and Bushwhacker closing the Terrace from 4 till 6:30 as the sun came up, and I was just like, wow. I was like, as if this is happening, and that was amazing. But after that, it was just hard work. It didn't come close. Do you know what I mean? It's like, no disrespect, I love Space and I'm so grateful for it, but it's like, me and Paul Woolford were both, at the time, we were both resident for Basics and we were both resident for Space, and we'd be like, pulling off these really long mixes and rocking it at Basics with all this nutty shit, and then you go to Space, it's like, you can't do that. You can do bits of that, but it's like, they're not going to get... So it's kind of like this bittersweet. It's kind of not really what you've thought. You couldn't... My thing is, if you've got a regular crowd, residencies are important as a DJ, for you as a DJ, but they're also massively important to shaping the club. Mm-hmm. So when you've got a club that regulars come to, you help shape that sound of the club. The guest DJs that come in and pass through every week are just by the by. Yeah. No, actually, not by the by. But I mean, I know a lot of the time we had amazing guests at Basics, but I know a lot of the regulars were just waiting for any one of the residents because they know that they know the club and that they know what they're going to get there. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you guess a hit and miss, and or sometimes you guess because they're guesting more rather than having a residency. They're coming and playing stuff, and we had a purist crowd, you know what I mean? And they're like, no, fuck that, we're not having this, mate. You know what I mean? So they're pretty ruthless, actually. They knew their tunes, you know what I mean? I seen Pete Tong in what documentary is it? Oh, it was a thing that was on the news a few years ago. But he was talking about the few times that he played at Basics and he did an essential selection and that. And obviously he knows Dev Beer well and, fully aware of Basics. But he said whenever he got us up there, he just felt like he were intruding. You know what I mean? I think that was like that for a lot of people. Because they were like, you're not on it, you're not pulling the wool over no one's eyes there, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so what was, we've mentioned Basics, mentioned We Love Sundays at Space, and you said you lived in Ibiza for a number of years. Yeah. Was there, when you were over there having that residency at Space, was there a sense of, I want to live here and live this life, or did that?
I think I had that the very first time I went to Ibiza. Yeah. I really did. When I was I was 19 the first time I went to Ibiza, 1990, no outside promoters there. Because I remember being at the Cafe Del Mar, so this is before Mambo's was opened. I think it's Alfredo playing. Didn't know who Alfredo was either. And even the Cafe Del Mar, it wasn't that big a deal. There's probably about 40 people out there outside, 40, 60 people, that's it. And he was playing Roy Ayers, Everybody Loves the Sunshine. As on a sunset, and I know that track anyway, but I remember being smoking some really nice hash as well. But it was the Ibiza spirit, and I remember just thinking, I've used the word loads of times before, but I remember just thinking like, so this is chilling out. I remember having that moment all on my own. I was just kind of like, first time I've ever left England, first time I ever got on a plane was to Ibiza. You know, I was actually going to meet Jeff Oakes, who we spoke about earlier from the Renaissance, and he gave me I had a cigarette box, a Marlboro Light cigarette box. It had a map drawn on it, how to get out of the airport and find the villa. Because this was like, I went there with probably 100 quid or something and stayed there for the whole summer. And I remember having a head bag, sports bag, with a few pairs of socks and shorts and not much clothes. At 19, I didn't have many possessions anyway. They were probably all there in that bag. And the funny thing is that when I came back, I had none of them. But that's another story in itself. But we got chased on the way to the airport, me and Jeff. Had to throw our bags so we could run. I was like too knackered. I'm like, I can't run. It's like, fucking hell, it's all I've got. We're on the way to the airport to go home after 4 months in Ibiza. This is all I've got. When I landed in London, all they had was what I was wearing. But so I had this. So it was this map, and it was like basically come out. No mobile phones and that. Then.
Yeah.
So like come out of the airport, turn right, roundabout, windmill, turn left, double back on yourself, villa on your right. Pretty simple, straightforward. And there it was. So I kind of always knew that I was going to live there. Just took a long time, and I think I made the decision to move there 10 years ago. Because I remember it was George Evelyn, who's Nightmares on Wax.
Yep.
He's a friend of mine. He's from Leeds. Yeah, I remember he moved out there. And then he's a year older than me, and it was his 40th birthday. Went out to celebrate his birthday and to DJ at his party that he had in April, just before the summer kicked in. And the girl that I was with at the time, I remember we was like, should we move here? Should we sell the house and move here? And it was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. So we made that decision. It took about 2 years for actually me and her to fall out and realise that wasn't going to happen. And then I moved there. I was like, all right. I was like, okay. So we were actually never going to move here together because that wasn't part of the plan. But this is. So then I moved there eventually.
Yeah. And you were working out there as well during that period?
I mean, basically I went travelling for a bit. I left Basics. I left my residency at Basics and kind of sold my house and put all my possessions in storage. And this was at the end of 2013. And I was just kind of like, I don't know what I want to do. I've never done anything other than DJing. I don't know where my life's going. A lot of things have changed. I just left Basics of 11 years. I've just left my partner of 11 years. A few friendships with people that I've had for a long time have ended. I just felt really disillusioned and just kind of like, I don't know what I want, but I know what I don't want, and it's this. And I knew I was going to go to India first. That was kind of on the radar. So I went to India first. And then kind of passed through Mexico, lived in Costa Rica for about 7 months, went to Peru, did ayahuasca and all that, went and stayed in the Amazon a couple of weeks with a shaman, which was really cool. And like all these completely different life-changing experiences. And then like a couple of years in, I was like, right, now what do you want to do while you... So, because this was also the first time I'd never not DJ'd. I didn't make a decision not to DJ, I just made a decision to change some things in my life. And like all of a sudden I'm like, well... I'm living in Costa Rica. I'm not here DJing. I'm not here socialising in the city life. There wasn't even a city. It was like a shanty town where I was living. You know what I mean? So I didn't know what I was doing, but.
Well, no. So I mean, during those travels as well, you said you went DJing. Were you absorbing music from these local scenes?
No, I didn't really experience any scenes. I mean, I lived in the jungle in Costa Rica with 2 people. But we had an amazing home in the jungle. We weren't roughing it or camping. Yeah. We had this home that had been built for the Americans when they were using it for the banana plantation. But the whole thing was kind of just like totally unplugged from the system and everything else. And for the first time ever in my life, at like 42 years old, I had no requirements, no mortgage to pay, no relationship to be in, nothing. It was like blank canvas, total blank canvas. Yeah. Which is why I went off to Peru and did all that as well. Yeah. It was kind of like, all right, well, let's see who we are. Yeah. So whenever I tried to listen to music, I couldn't even listen to it. I was like, it just felt alien. Unless it was really chilled. Yeah. But that actually became really good grounding for when I finally got to Ibiza. Because I got to Ibiza in 2014. The first 18 months or something of being there, people didn't even know I was there. I didn't even tell anyone I was there. I moved there in the winter. I'd never been to the island in the winter before, so I purposely moved in the winter because I'd also gone from like thriving off being in the thick of things to kind of actually being really after the time out. When I came back, I was like, I'm no good around people.
Yeah.
I'm not. I was like, I need to be in my own little bubble. I'm too fragile and sensitive to be around it. I was picking up everything. It was mental. But I had money in the bank and all that, so I didn't need to do anything either, unless I actually wanted to. So that was the only time it run into like the best part of a couple of years without DJing. And then when the gigs started coming in, there were like all these laid-back, sun-kissed gigs. I was like, oh, this is great, because I've just been in Costa Rica listening to nothing but chilled stuff for the last year. When it comes to like getting back into music, and obviously setting, I was thinking about this yesterday as well. It's like how I was playing some music last night. I've got like amazing music over there. I'm listening to some stuff, and then I'm kind of like, it's funny how some stuff doesn't even translate here, even to myself. It's like in Ibiza, it's like, this is perfect, even to yourself without playing to someone. It's funny how the spirit of a place, I guess, can influence you in what you do musically. And
it's all about the context,
which was great for
it?
Wax the Jam as well. It's like totally wide open. I'm playing Latino and all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
But being able to mix it as well, because once I'd got my head round on the new CDJs, it's kind of like, if you loop stuff, you can mix it like house.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, all right, because I like to let mixes run, like long mixes, but you can't let those tracks run. They're gonna run all over. Yeah, you can do it with a pitch, but it's you're all over the shop. Yeah. But I'm like, oh right, okay, bar loop at the start, bar loop at the end, or wherever you're ready, and mix that for as long as you like till you're bored of the mix, and let it go. And it's like, oh wow. So that it was like learning to DJ again. That I'm really glad I had that opportunity to do it, because it was great. It was like, how cool is it to be able to play soul, funk, disco, reggae, jazz, and make it all work? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And just make it all work, or even just play loops as well. Yeah. Play a really good percussion loop and put an acapella over it. Yeah. Or just do stuff and do stuff differently. I mean, I'm my own biggest fan. Right? So all I listen to is me. There's so much different layers of stuff that I've done out there, but like that mix that I had on when you came in, I'm just like, so great that those things got recorded. You can't recreate those things. No. There's no thought. You're not playing to you're not necessarily playing to a crowd. You're setting a mood, and if anything, you're doing the opposite. You're playing to keep people at a certain pace, but not get them up and get them at it. And playing for like 5 and 6 hours. Yeah. There was a time where I was in Ibiza. Sometimes I'd be like doing 5 and 6 gigs a week. 3 or 4 of them would be like for CV, but it just fly by. It was like 6 hours, bam, next day 6 hours. It's a good way of learning your craft. Yeah. That in fact it's the only way, it's like I'd never be able to, not that I won't be able to, it just won't translate in the same way for me to stand in my living room and try and do that for 6 hours. Yeah. I could play music for 6 hours, but it's not because the feeling's different, and that and the setting's different. So the overall outcome is going to be different, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. And your vinyl collection, did you sell it?
Yeah, I did, a lot of it, most of it,
So I remember reading about this in the press. I think it made like the national press as well.
Bonkers, went viral, didn't it? It was absolutely crazy. So I'd never ever thought about selling my records, ever. Never thought I would.
So where were they in a lockup somewhere? Yeah.
Basically, when I moved out of my home in 2012, and a year later I left England. So I put them in lockup. It was about 8,000 or something. I put them in lockup, and I moved out of my home, sold it, lived with a couple of mates while I was working out what I was going to do, and then went off travelling. And then so I'm backpacking. I'm not a DJ, and I've got no call for. If I had a mate, it'd cover that wall and that wall. It'd cover all that, because it did in my house, so he's going to do it here and more, and the stairs, and they're everywhere, right? So I'd never ever thought about selling them, and then I just read this. I sat at home and I was on Facebook, and it was like Seth Troxler buys Hacienda DJ's record collection of 2,500 records. And there's a DJ called Dave Aslam. So I'm basically thinking, my record collection's better than that. I'm 4 times as big as that. So without giving it a second thought, this is typical me, total impulsive, never thought about selling my records out of all these years. And then, so I just went, status, just seen that Seth Troxler's bought Dave Aslam's record, seriously thinking about selling mine, serious offers only, and put up 2 photographs of when I were moving them. Yeah. Right? Not even knowing if I want to sell them or not. And it just went bonkers. Everyone shared it. Everyone getting in touch. I had Matt Tolfrey, Eats Everything, Seth Troxler. Loads of people get wanting to buy it.
Yeah.
Record shops, record dealers. I had radio stations from America phoning me, wanting to do interviews. I was in the NME. I was like, I'm in the fucking NME. You've never mentioned me once in all the years of playing them, and now I'm selling them. You want to write about me? I'm like, that's irony for you. Do you know, I'm getting all this press for fucking giving it up. When I spent years trying to get some press while I'm doing it. I'm like, thanks for nothing. All of you. I was just kind of like, I didn't need the money as well at that point. So I was just kind of like, oh, do you know what? I'm kind of backed off a little bit. But it started to... not scare me, it's not the right word, but I was definitely like overwhelmed by it all. And I was just a little bit, I was like, well, I need to work out what I want to do here. And there was one guy that I'd kind of kept in touch with. He'd heard of me and was kind of really keen on me. And then he was like, do you know Bolton? I was like, as if he's talking about Bolton outside Manchester, this French guy. I'm like, yeah, I know Bolton. And he's like, I'm there playing there in a couple of weeks. So I said, well, look, my lockup is in Leeds. It's it's 50 minutes from there. So luckily I just swapped numbers with him and the guy who won the lockup. I didn't even leave Ibiza to go and do it. So the guy went, had a look, sent me a picture on WhatsApp of him amongst all my records, and started sending me messages going, oh, Sounds of Blackness, and oh, you got this, you got that, and we agreed on a price, 15 grand. Agreed on.
Yeah.
But I can't, which really is nothing. I spent about £1,000 on Discogs in lockdown. It's nothing. I've been buying my shit back, honestly, I have. Because I have, I'm not kidding. Because I kind of made the decision. I was like looking at this practical, right? But what I kept was kind of like, there's some cool albums and stuff down there. Stuff that like, because a lot of the stuff was kind of like just straight up DJ tackle, It's like every week for, I don't know, best part of 30 years or whatever. Well, no, actually, because the whole vinyl thing slowed down in like you couldn't really, there wasn't really anything new to buy come the 2005 or something like that.
Yeah.
But certainly for a good 15 years or something, I've just been buying records like every week.
Yeah. And
shitloads. So a lot of it's of the time and just for then.
Yeah.
Right. But it's a great thing to have. It's a great tool extension to kind of have on your wall and look back and go, and it is part of history and all that kind of thing. But I was also going through these revelations within myself about attachment to things and all that. So I was kind of like, well, this is funny. This is serving double duty again. Kind of makes sense because it's the ultimate attachment that actually is not really serving me, because I was like, what can I do with this stuff? I've got to live in a world where I'm like, eventually I'm going to have this nice big home in Ibiza where there's place for that. And I also thought, if I'm going to do it, I have to know that I can never... It's pointless me doing it if I'm going to sit there regretting it.
Yeah.
Right? And if I'm going to sit there thinking about it, then there's loads of scope to regret it. So you need to get in the right headspace about it. And then I was kind of like, and also, if you ever do, when you're in the position, if whatever you do want, you can get it back. And actually just have a much more refined version of what you had.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I'm doing. I bought loads of cool shit like old Disco 12s and stuff like that, and stuff that's cool to, like, if you're not DJing, just to listen to a nice piece of vinyl, nice album, nice compilation or something like that.
Yeah. So what we always do, it's kind of time for the playlist. At the end of the interview, we always ask our guests to submit 5 tracks for the House Culture Perfect playlist on Spotify against 5 themes. And you've been kind enough to kind of get back to me on the choices. I know we spoke before the mics came on in terms of, there's technically no floor filler that's always in your box or whatever, but it's always good to have an idea of kind of what, for you, what has been a good track over the years. So, and we've already talked about the Catalysts, the Bee Gees.
Yes. So they've
staying alive. So unless there's any other kind of experiences, I think we've probably covered it all on that.
I told you all about that, my obsession with it, seeing it on the South Bank show, Yeah, I didn't leave anything out there. That's why that's in there. I mean, the choice is maybe, I don't know if the choice is the favourite.
Yeah.
I was looking at the album last night. I was like, I don't know. I'd have to say that album, but it's a bit unfair to put it down to one track. But that's an obvious one. And once my ego had got over the oh God, what if people think this isn't a cool tune? And I'm like, how cool do you think you were at 6 years old, 7 years old? It really don't matter. I was like, oh right, staying alive then.
Okay, and a floor filler, Doug Willis.
Doug Willis, yeah.
Get your own.
Yeah, as I told you, I found that a hard one too, because I don't really have like, oh yeah, guaranteed floor filler. And it's not an obvious, because it's kind of a real funk workout as well. But it's tried and tested.
Yeah.
I don't really get bored of it. There's not much stuff that kind of that sticks around with me. I kind of just for my own personal taste and excitement. I get over things pretty quickly. But I think I told you when we were talking about that track earlier about back in Sheffield '97 playing it. So it's like, but yeah, when I was resident for Wax the Jam last year in Ibiza, it's just one of those tracks. It's like no one's walking off the dance floor when you play that. Let's just say that, that's it. And no one's not dancing either. And to something that's actually really kind of authentic sounding as well. Yeah. Not that I've got anything against anything sounding too electronic or anything, but that's just a good funk.
Yeah, it's got all the drums and the funk.
Like,
yeah.
So that's that really. That makes sense to have that for that reason.
Cool. And a sunsetter.
Sunsetter, yeah. Well, I went for Summer Madness, Kool and the Gang. I was toying between that or some Vangelis stuff, which is really actually probably more blissed out.
I'll tell you now that we've done an interview with Harry Romero, and I think he chose Kool and the Gang Summer Madness for his sunsetter. Right. So if you wanted something different in a playlist.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I'm happy with Summer Madness. It's a great track. The funny thing is, I was like that, doing that old what do you think to my girlfriend last night? And they just say what they like anyway, and you don't pay any attention to that. What they say is not really going to change anything. I was like, I just couldn't think. I was like, there's a Vangelis track that I was like really into. I said, I remember doing a chilled out tape in like 95 when I went on holiday. And I remember putting a Vangelis track on it. I was going through Blade Runner soundtrack last night. I was like, I can't work out what it is. And that's probably because there's not that there's any beats in Summer Madness, but the Vangelis is way more classic. Café Del Mar Sunsets, totally chilled. But yeah, Kool and the Gang Summer Madness is a cool track. And also when I pulled it up on YouTube to show my partner, I was like, there's a picture of a sunset. I was like, oh look, there you go. I'll take that as a sign. But if I do find out what the Vangelis, no, do you know what? I'll stick with what it is. Who else is going to join the dots and go, Harry Romero? He's obviously got good taste as well.
Absolutely. I think in the interview, I remember him describing it as when you hear that track, it's like taking a hit on a big spliff. It's got that kind of real feeling. A tearjerker. We were talking about it beforehand, weren't we? But yeah.
Well, the honest answer is nothing springs to mind as like something that just makes me cry anyway as a song. Nothing was springing to mind. I was having to think about it too hard. And then, like I said to you though, but music can make me emotional anyway without it being about the content. So just on a resonance level, I can listen to something, whether it's something from my past, I don't know if it connects something energetically, it's some subconscious thing that's within me, I don't know, but it's not it's by no means in an upsetting way. It's just a release of emotion. I choke. 9 times out of 10 it's a choke more than actually crying. Do you know what I mean? It's like the weird thing is as well, it's like I've caught myself many times over the years. It's very rare I'd actually tell someone in that moment this is what's happening, but I could be telling you now a story about a tune or something, and I can actually feel myself welling up, and it's like I don't know why I'm welling up, because it's not like, oh, this story's so, it's not about that. Yeah. But for whatever reason, it almost affects you in the same way as hearing the music. So, as I explained, I chose Marvin Gaye, What's Happening, Brother. And it's my favourite album of all time. It was released on the day that I was born. As I showed you there, I've got a copy from 1971, never played. So I'm totally connected to this record on loads of levels. And it's not that it makes me cry, but there's a feeling and an energy that runs throughout the whole of that album, as we discussed earlier, which is, I think it definitely comes across what they were feeling and what was in the air at the time, and the sentiment behind a lot of the tracks, is definitely in there. And I think Marvin was channeling some shit when he made that album. Yeah. And Yeah, I feel that. So today, it was only today, earlier, I sent you that early, didn't
Yeah.
I? Yeah. I was like, right, I'm going to go for that. First, I was thinking what's going on, because I've cried before when that's been on.
Mm.
And I don't know, maybe having a bad day or something. I just put that and I was just like, oh, I'll let myself just wallow in that for a moment.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, it's that's the one. It's the emotion in the backing vocals as well. The harmonies in it.
Yeah,
I'm just like,
yeah.
look, I get
Yeah,
goosebumps now talking about it. It just nails it. So on all those levels, and the fact that it's as old as I am, and as we said, it's just as relevant today as if it was made today.
Yeah, completely.
You know, timeless.
Yeah, yeah.
And a masterpiece as well.
Yeah,
for me.
I love it. And the last tune.
Yeah, not an obvious choice, but I guess what is. And I thought about this, and like I've never had a last tune like one that I've got planned. Never have. The same as I've never had real kind of floor fillers as well. It's like every gig's different, and the gig may go a completely different way, and you just don't get to do that. So my last tunes definitely tend to be spontaneous. But when I chose this track, I just kind of thought, right, if I've just DJ'd now, and I've just finished now, you know, based on how I'm feeling now, I'm like, what would you give them as, you know, if they were shouting like one more? So I kind of saw it as I'd have played a completely different kind of vibe to what this track is. But the track is an old West End, which is obviously a benchmark label, disco label. And the track is by Force. It's called Keep On Dancing. I just love I love everything about it. Such a quirky little track. And that opening guitar lick, just that on its own, you hear that, it's like, it's like, where the fuck's this going? Like, you know what I mean? And then the way all the percussion comes in and how loose it is and everything, the production on that, it's like, that's always going to sound good in a club.
Yeah.
And if you can't dance to that, then it's a good job I'm playing it as the last tune, because it's time you got off in it, you know. It's time you left. So yeah, it's the kind of thing if I've been having a good night, just, you know, sweating it out to house music all night, and then that little curveball got thrown in at the end, I'll be happy going home on.
Yeah, banging on the DJ booth door saying, "What is this?"
And then be like, "Oh shit, you've got it already." You know, that one, I've done that before. But what's this? Then they show you it, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I gave that back in the record shop." Downer. Go back to Eastern Block the next day. Can I have that tune again?
Amazing. And the one final question we always ask is, we are house culture. You are part of the culture of house music and the whole scene. If you could sum up kind of what it's brought to you in your life and the best experiences that it's given you, looking at it from a positive aspect, how do you kind of look back on it and look forward?
I mean, the best thing ever. It is the best thing ever. It's just a weird one, because, you know, for a long time it's something that's always moving. So you never really sit around too long to reflect. You know, you get opportunities like this. You know, when we opened up and you were like, "Oh, okay, you've done this, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, me that, innit? Should be minting now, shouldn't I? With all that on my CV." But yeah, but just the best thing ever. You know, on every level. To kind of like the whole thing is I see as quite romancing, really. To kind of catch it on the cusp, and the whole summer of love and everything being open, and then, you know, the reverberations of that will go with me to my grave and wherever I go from then on. Do you know what I mean? For sure. You know, I was 18, 19, 20, so that the influence of that now as a bloke who's 50 next, you know, he's like still influencing me, the way you are with people, the way you think about things, and, you know, music and interaction and every level. So, and then, you know, just like endless good times.
Yeah.
You know, on tap, just like spoiled. It's like, oh, is this what my life is? When that's your life, and it's just like, no wonder you're like this. For those that can't see, I've got a beaming smile. It's like every photograph, it's like happy days. Happy days. It's like, oh, life is shit. It's like, you know, of course not. It's like, you know, to turn it into music and be paid from it and being out and experiencing it from both sides, you know, being enthused by who you're listening to, and, you know, being enthused by playing to people and what you can do, you know. So I still like the both sides, you know, the punter and the DJ thing, you know what I mean? I don't know if this really answers the question what you're saying, but I couldn't really sum it up in one word. But I just think the whole experience as something to be part of. You know, let's say if I'd have been, no disrespect to anybody that is, but let's say I'd have been a mechanic or a welder or something, right? And that's kind of what I do. And I get up and put me mucky overalls on and go to work and do what I do and come home. Probably can't wash the oil off my hands properly and all that, you know, and do the best you can.
Yeah.
Dry it. All that is like, there's that experience. Or there's like your lifestyle is your job as such, and your lifestyle is actually something that actually brings you lots of joy and takes you to lots of different places, and debauchery and all that kind of side, as well as everything else. You know, to actually go through all the different stages and just be at a stage where I'm actually just all right now with life, without having to do this or that to make it any better, and then everything else around it is also amazing as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's a really nice 30 years plus of like, you know, it's like, well, who knows where stuff's going now? Just, you know what? There's the answer right there. It's like, who knows? It's like, so you can't even go down that road. It's like, let's just see what we can do today.
Yeah.
See where it takes us. Do you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
the best we can. You know, if I want to still live as joyful a life as I can do, given circumstances. You know, I don't know. It sounds naff, doesn't it? But you know, you've got to be happy with where you're at as well, really.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And this is where we're at. So it's happy days for now.
That's brilliant. That is the perfect place to end.
No worries, man. Pleasure.
House culture.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. I love meeting Buckley. Such a cool guy, and he's full of hilarious stories, isn't he? Oh man, I don't think I'll ever listen to an ABC track again without thinking of that Martin Fry story. And if you want to check out what the Buckley sound is all about, you can listen to his exclusive 90-minute House Culture mix on our SoundCloud page. Head on over to soundcloud.com/houseculturenet for a slice of delicious dance floor goodness. You can also find Buckley's choices for our perfect playlist over on Spotify. All you need to do is open up your Spotify player, search for House Culture Perfect Playlist, and here you'll find all of the tunes that Buckley and I chatted about, as well as submissions from all of our previous podcast guests. Make sure you follow it to stay up to date with what is now a huge selection of stone cold classics, forgotten gems and new discoveries. Once you've tucked into all of those tunes, please help support the House Culture podcast by loving, liking, tweeting, sharing and rating or reviewing us on Apple. As I always say, this last bit is really important. Please help make a difference. If you say something good, we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. This time I have to say a huge hello to Steve Turner, who got in touch with me on Facebook to say that he loved listening to his fellow hometown boys Shades of Rhythm discuss their career in our last episode. He thought that their Diana Ross Top of the Pop story was hilarious. Make sure you check that out if you haven't already, and stay tuned to our podcast as we round out this second season at the end of this year with some huge guests. Believe me, you're not going to want to miss these ones. To make sure you keep abreast of our releases and stay connected to other house music lovers the world over, hit up our Instagram feed at houseculturenet or follow the hashtag #TrueHouseCulture. And finally, don't forget, if you want to get in touch with me, Matt Rouse, you can contact me directly on Instagram at DJ Matt Rouse. Thanks for listening, stay safe, and see you next time.
House culture.